All righty, let's see here. So, what did we cover last week? Let's do that first. What did we cover last week?
Be fair and just in your dealing.
Okay. What else?
Be faithful in your engagement.
Okay. And what else?
That's enough.
There's one more.
Well,
Somebody knows it. Somebody knows it.
well,
We got,
honor your commitment.
huh?
Honor your commitment.
Honor your commitments. Okay. All right. Anything else anybody noted from the last week's study? Oh. Oh. Anybody? Tonight, we're going to check some things off of our list that we have covered. And I do want to use one thing that we've got in our current bylaw and our church manual that we use here, but I want us just to reverberate for just a moment some of the things that we have covered so far in what we have passed through on the covenant study. And first thing that we want to say is that before the church covenant even is in our church's ordinances and doctrine bylaws set that we do have a statement that's in there that comes before that. There's one thing that comes before that, and I want to make sure we point that before we go into tonight's part. But some things that we've already worked on and covered is that part in our bylaws states that only the Bible as authority in matters of Christian conduct. But then it also says as a practical statement of ethics, Christian ethics, by which the church expects its members to abide. Then the church recognizes the following church covenant. But our statement before that is that we recognize only the Bible as authority in matters of Christian conduct. But practically, when it comes to the ethics by which the church is expecting the members to abide, is where we've gotten to the covenant. Now, we've got in multiple things. I stripped down a lot of extra words in this tonight for us just so we can look at the various points that we have covered in the actual church covenant so far, from walking together in Christian love, striving for the advancement of the church in knowledge, holiness, and comfort, promoting its prosperity and spirituality, sustaining its worship, ordinances, discipline, and doctrines, contributing cheerfully and regularly to the support of the ministry, the expenses of the church, the relief of the poor, and the spread of the gospel through all nations. Then we got to maintain family and secret devotions, religiously educate our children, seek the salvation of our kindred and acquaintances, walk circumspectly in the world, be just in our dealings, faithful in our engagements, and exemplary in our deportment. Now, Roger has been, and he's here tonight, so Roger has been dealing with the heat, and he wanted to make a statement for everybody tonight. So for all those watching online and here tonight, I just want you to show that he said it is too hot to drive his new car. So he said, let's just go ahead and continue the Bible study where there's air conditioner, because it is too hot. This is an early model Chevy. Okay. Yeah, he got this one. I don't know if they call this the classic, but this is, it's just got too hot for him to go out and ride around. So he said, let's just stay in the pool. So just be aware when you watch him drive, if you see him going through Jonesville, call the law, okay? He probably ain't got a license plate for that thing. Go ahead and call it. So when we look at something tonight, tell me the strongest word version you can use of definition of what this word means.
Stay away from it.
Stay away from it. What else? What do we say this word means? Okay? Don't even go near it. Stay away from it. Anybody else got one to say what we mean by this word? A good one would be, don't think about it. Don't even think about it. But I want us to say that what we're getting ready to study tonight in the covenant, in this part that we're studying tonight, that all of the words mentioned in the covenant tonight, this word applies to all of them. This word right here applies to all the words that we have in the covenant. Now, if we just look at the word avoid, and I want you to see that how clear it stays, even in the lines of defining the word. But if you shun something, what does it mean for you to shun something?
Stay away from it.
You have nothing to do with it. To shift or clear off, or quit and evacuate, to escape, to emit or throw out, or even to make it void. There are many versions of how that the word avoid is defined in the action. Now you notice, if you're avoiding something, I want you to pay attention to the fact that if you're avoiding something, it takes action. Everything in the definition of the word avoid tonight takes action for you to avoid. So tell me what you say that the word gossip is. If you give me what you say gossip is, what is gossip?
Ask a woman.
Ask a woman. Okay, that's Roger's definition.
I don't think it's a difference.
So what is gossip?
Hearsay.
Okay.
Rumor.
What? Rumor. Okay. What else? Anything else?
Hope says if you repeat a matter, it separates very friends. Telling if it is true, just telling something. Somebody tells you about what somebody did or said, you go tell them about it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's considered gossip.
Uh-huh. So I want you to see something, and it might be a little surprising to you, but out of 5 separate lines in the dictionary that define this word, there's only one that lines up with what we believe it is. There's 5 separate areas I pulled, and I directly put them on here so you could see that there are 5 defining lines of the word gossip. And the first one is a sponsor, one who answers for a child in baptism. That's a godfather. The next one is a tippling companion. Then the one that we recognize is the one who runs from house to house tattling and telling news, an idle tattler. A friend or neighbor, or mere tattle, idle talk. But the one that we separate most time to when we get into the action of doing what we call gossiping, we would stick to number 3, the one that runs from house to house tattling and telling news, that is considered an idle tattler. Now, I want us to see first a couple things to define a few things about gossip, because you can get so technical about what gossip is and is not that you can split hairs so many ways that you'll eventually not even know what you were talking about. So gossip can run thousands of directions. But first, let me give you just a few verses to see for just a moment. When the Bible specifically mentions the word gossip in Leviticus 19:16, thou shalt not go up and down as a talebearer among thy people, neither shalt thou stand against the blood of thy neighbor. I am the Lord. Psalms 50:20, thou sittest and speakest against thy brother. Thou slanderest thine own mother's son. In Proverbs 11:13, a talebearer revealeth secrets, but he that is of a faithful spirit concealeth the matter. Proverbs 20:19, he that goeth about as a talebearer revealeth secrets. Therefore meddle not with him that flattereth with his lips. In Ezekiel 22:9, in thee are men that carry tales to shed blood. And in thee they eat upon the mountains. In the midst of thee they commit lewdness. Now, one of the very prizing parts of the Bible that I'm going to use tonight, because it's the strongest of versions for anything regarding gossip, is considered to be in the book of James in chapter 3. And he says in chapter 3, but the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Therewith bless we God, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of God. Out of the same mouth proceedeth the blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be. So I got a question tonight. I want you to answer this question before we go any further. So my first question tonight is this. Where does gossip originate?
From a person
Okay. But where does it originate?
in your mind, I guess, or heart.
Okay. It's in the Bible. The Bible tells where gossip originates. Where does it begin? That's the question. Some of these prime prospective people. Anybody know? Any examples? All right, let's look at James. Let's see. James chapter 3, verse 6. Let's use this one. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the tongue among our members, that it defileth the whole body, and setteth on fire the course of nature, and is set on fire of hell. The tongue being one of the things that ignites gossip, the flames of hell. Let me just put it this way: the flames of hell is what you can say ignites gossip. And the reason that I call that the flames of hell is because who's behind it all?
Devil.
The devil. The devil's behind the gossip because when he can lick it and twist it and turn it around for any of his purposes that's not for good, then your originated gossip comes straight from the flames of hell. And whether you got directly burned or indirectly burned, I'll give you the example. If they're talking about you, you're in direct burning. But if you're the one telling what you've heard and it's definitely not true, then you're also indirectly getting burnt because you are one of the carriers, the talebearers that the Bible talks about. But when you listen to gossip, now I'm not saying you're spreading gossip, but even if you just listen to gossip, then you're giving the devil a foothold. You're giving the devil time and space in your lives because that, in my opinion, is the same thing the devil wants you to say. If you're spreading gossip and rumors, that's what the devil wants you to do. That's his prerogative in the whole thing. And if you want a title, I came up with the job title for anybody that likes gossip. They are a postal worker for the devil. They carry it all out and deliver it. That's what they are, the devil's postman. If the gossiping in play is literally what I call the devil's postman. But then let's look at another piece in Luke chapter 6. I pulled specific things with gossip tonight. It says, a good man out of the treasures of his own heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh. So, in other words, and this is in red letters, Jesus is saying that our words is telling what's in the heart. If the heart is full of evil, that's where the gossip comes from. Insults come from a heart full of evil. Criticism is an easy one that would come from a heart full of evil. And anytime that you allow your sinful nature, the human flesh nature, to control you, that is when evil starts to prevail and starts to spew, which is back to the very thing that we are talking about revolving gossip. Now, there's some things that gossip creates, and I pulled some things that I just have as examples tonight, but there's some things that creates from gossip alone. Here's an example. Words of hatred is one of the things. You know, the more that people get into, I want to use this for a second. Have you ever paid attention to people that are really good at gossip? That the more they start doing it and the better they get at it, the more fueled they become when they learn something new, and then they have to run back to everybody and tell them, oh, now wait a minute, I learned some more. Let me catch you up on what I've learned since I last talked to you. See, it's like a fire, fueling. It's just getting fueled. And when gossip runs, you'll see one of the very things about it is that it becomes words of hatred, the attack. That's one of the biggest things about they even, and David wrote in Psalms 109, they're attacking me without even a cause. I'm just getting attacked on every end. And one of the best things I like to say, and we're in a good time to bring it up, is when election season goes on. Any election, Claiborne County's election is getting ready to have their first run in August. So, I mean, the hardest thing you can have is an attack without a cause. These people don't like somebody just because they don't like them. But 90% of the reason people have what they know about somebody or their opinion is because of what?
They heard it from somebody else.
They heard it from somebody. They don't know if it's true. They don't know if anything they know about that person, whoever it is true or not. But they themselves normally will then share what they've learned about this person running for office with somebody else. And then it carries and carries and carries. Now, when we allow, and this is back to Ephesians 4:31, when you allow things like hurt or bitterness, rage, anything like that, to stay in the heart. Now, I'm saying it's living there. Then we start entertaining the thoughts of retaliation, revenge. Those actions start getting brewed because we're allowing the anger, the bitterness, the rage, hurt, whatever it is, to start bringing forth the desire to retaliate or get revenge. And how do we vent when we're mad? How do we really vent when we're mad?
Lose control.
Yeah, but what do we do when we vent when we're mad? We gossip. We go back to the tongue. So, we start shooting people in the back with those verbal bullets, as I'll call it. Unless we can find another way to deflect the anger, that is how typical people most of the time deal with and do anything. Now, another thing that can cause you to slip into gossiping, and you might not even notice or realize it, is in 1 Timothy 5. And with all they learn to be idle, wandering about from house to house, and not only idle, but tattlers, also and busybodies, speaking things which they ought not. These idleness actions is what can lead us into gossip. If people have too much time on their hands, they often become the habit of gossiping and busybodies. What is the famous saying about idle hands? Yes, the devil's workshop is playground. That's his grounds. Do you all ever remember? And I didn't know this until I looked this up, but there was a story in the L.A. Times about a college student. Okay, a college student. Y'all remember ever hearing about a horrific story in the L.A. Times years back about a college student? And the way I read it and understood it is he went and visited a prostitute. Okay, and when he got ready to get up close to her lips to kiss her, she had a razor hidden in her mouth and had it locked between her two teeth. And when she got right up to him, she slipped that razor out and cut his lips off. Y'all remember that? This was apparently a widely famous thing in history of the LA Times News. But if you want to take the same principle of what the words are doing, it's the same as having a razor blade in your mouth. You're cutting into something. No matter what you're doing, you're cutting in to something. Now, there's nothing good that we can identify biblically about gossip itself. And this is just a few things that, in general terms, it will do. Especially when it comes into being trouble all the time. One thing it's really good at doing is hiding the truth. We see that a lot. Ruins reputations, whether it's yours or somebody else's, destroying relationships, dividing churches, very common thing to have when you see. Here's another one. Now, this is very relative to a lot of problems that go on in our current day times. When people begin to believe what they're told instead of knowing the truth, they are very prone to leave a church. That's very commonly seen. If they are the ones being wounded by gossip by someone else, that's one of the common things that people would leave a church. And the churches have split many times over rumors and tales. That people have believed in rumors. They've split many times. One of the things is Proverbs 6:19 tells you that one of the 7 sins that God absolutely hates is the stirring up of dissension among the people, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among the brethren. So we know now what gossip does, what we're dealing with, what we're looking at in the eye. My question first is, what is the antidote to dealing or being part of gossip? What's the antidote to gossip? Anybody know?
Don't listen to it.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody know anything else? An antidote to gossip? Anybody?
Prayer.
Huh?
Prayer.
Okay. Well, I want you to know there is an antidote, a cure for this problem. Science and research has came with a quick cure. And therefore, we have some answers and abilities here of the actual antidote. Roger, don't worry, we found one. Okay? We found an antidote. So, if I'm going to give you some antidotes from the Bible, that's what I'm using, some antidotes from the Bible tonight that we want to do when dealing with gossip. Because this is my problem. Everybody in the churches can tell me about what gossip basically is. They may not be able to define everything in the Bible about it, but they can tell me pretty much in their own layman's terms what gossip is. But then when I ask everybody in the church, what do you do about it? What do you do about it? And I say, you can't speak nothing to me unless it's in here, and I want you to show it to me. What answer do I get? What answer do you think I get? Huh?
You probably get it.
Most people say, well, it just tells you that we can't gossip. That's what they say. That's what the answer is. But the Bible, if it defines a problem, then it has an answer for how to deal with it, or the antidote to this problem. I'm going to give you some easy examples to see. And the first thing that you should do when dealing with things related to gossip is that we should be overlooking whatever it is. We should be overlooking the offense. And one of the things about it is that Christians get too thin-skinned. Okay? If I was going to tell you any animal that you need to be like a rhinoceros. The rhinoceros skin is so thick on those dinosaurs that nothing could hardly penetrate what I call the armor skin on its back. Nothing could almost bite through or get into it. It was so tough. But we've gotten so thin-skinned now that just anything can get us. How many people right now wear their feelings on their shoulders?
Many.
So if you correct somebody, you have just torn the world apart. It's like they're not getting their tax return for the rest of their life. I mean, you have just erupted the world when we deal with some things and what we look at. And, don't be surprised if someone gets offended by some actions that you choose to do or take when dealing with things related to gossip. How quickly is people in just in church, how quickly are church people to tell somebody else how another member offended them? How quickly? Oh, yeah. Or, let's just say that the church approaches somebody on whatever they call them on, something they bring up, or whatever they correct them on. They get offended and leave. Everywhere they go, because they're offended now. Everywhere they go, what are they doing? They gossip. Because, and here's my ploy on that, and that's why I'm saying this, is that if they went to every church they go after they've left and say, this is what they said to me, and this is the very thing that they said, and the Bible that they used, that's what I'm going to say, is the Bible that they used to defend what they were telling me, then at that point, we're getting into the fact of we can verify some truth here. I can go back and find it. Okay, if you tell me what they said to you, I can go back and we'll look at it, we'll find it. But as soon as somebody gets offended, immediately the retaliation, revenge, or anger, one of them three comes into play, and normally it fires off that people are real quick to let it be known of what upset them or offended them. Now, Roger Gibbons actually got offended. No, back up. The pastor got offended at him. Maybe jealous. Maybe we use the word jealous, but he got offended. And when he got upset about it, he come to Roger and he was highly upset. What was you doing that he was so upset about you doing?
Talking about the one in Michigan.
Mhm.
This one deacon, his wife had died, and his sister went over to his house, and this lady was coming out of the bedroom with him.
Mm-hmm.
And she brought it before the board.
Mm-hmm.
And in of Michigan, the deacons opened the service and stuff. After he just got a preach, but anyway, we talked to that man, and said, brother, you think you're doing that? It's wrong. And when you give us your assurance, you won't do it again. He said, no.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta have more self-control than that.
Mm-hmm.
Pastor thought it was okay. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that stands up there, I want them to be living right.
Mm-hmm.
So him and I had a, say there's a wall between us. And eventually I had to leave, but I was just going through motions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even though I was doing everything I was doing before, it was just going through the motions.
Mm-hmm.
So I left, I mean, not even, that's what I had to do.
People being offended very quickly, especially to any correction,
And he was one of my best friends.
Yeah.
I mean,
or the pastor that got upset because you get people's asking you to come
oh, yeah,
visit.
and
Or
then,
something.
this other one got upset because people were calling me, want me to come and pray with them.
Uh-huh.
Instead of calling him.
Uh-huh.
I was told him, hey, brother, if people got confidence in me to come and pray with them, I'm going.
Mhm.
Period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, that's, so I've had my share of it.
The thing about it is that if you're offended by anyone or anything, who are you supposed to communicate the offense to?
Perfect.
The offender. Wouldn't that be it? The offender. That's exactly who the communication should be with. The next thing from overlooking, which is first, then the next one you get into in Proverbs says that he that goeth about as a talebearer revealeth secrets, therefore meddle not with him that flattereth with his lips. This is one of the things that don't listen to it. That's one of the biggest things we get is we're using the word avoid gossip. Well, if we're avoiding it, then the first thing we do is we stop listening to it. You know, one of the things about gossip is that, in my opinion, if you're spreading gossip that's not true, that's something that's not true, can't be proven, there's no proof to, things like that that's not true. The first thing that needs to happen is that the line of gossip needs to be approached. Those people need to be put in their place quickly to stop running with such fail terrors, whatever they want to spread, whatever they want to do. So then the Bible tells us, first overlook, we're not to listen. And then the very famous part we've talked about so many times, the Bible tells you, is to confront the source of the gossip. And this is where you go to tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he shall hear you, then thou hast gained thy brother. If he will not hear, then you take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. And if he shall neglect to hear him, tell it to the church. But if he neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as a heathen man and a publican. One of the things that comes through is that we should confront them with the right factual information. And then the one thing that comes out with instruction in that is in Ephesians 4:15, that we have to speak the truth in love. Now, the truth is the very thing that stops all falsehood. And when you learn the truth of the matter and you come in and confront the source of the gossip or whatever the problem is, you'll find that most of the time, I have seen this a lot, most of the time, the source of the gossip or somewhere in the line of gossip, when you confront them and you straighten out the information to what the facts really is, or give them the actual facts, you know that most of the time they're oblivion to the truth. They have no clue. They have absolutely no clue what the truth really is. So then we come into our actions. One of the things we get back to in our actions is that we are not to let any corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And as Mama has already taught you, if you can't say something nice, don't say nothing at all. That way you're just better off, not even getting into trouble before something else flies off the handle. And then there's this thing, I just ran across this verse this week, and I put it in here because I really like this to be a good reminder. But in the book of Matthew, chapter 12, this verse goes really good. And he says, "But I say unto you that every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give account thereof in the day of judgment." So those that really like to run with it, I'm just keeping in my mind the old saying is their day is coming. Their day is coming. That's Bible. I'm not making that up. Every idle word that men shall speak, they shall give an account thereof in the day of judgment. Now, our next word, what does this one mean?
Talking behind somebody's back.
Okay. Anybody else got anything to add to it? What that means? First, we're avoiding gossip. Now we're avoiding backbiting. What is backbiting? Okay, that's a good one. Anything else to add to it? Roger, get on to him and get quiet.
What's wrong with you people?
So,
You've been traveling all week.
so I pulled the Bible dictionary. Really don't give you nothing. I tell you what's interesting is this word's only mentioned one time in the whole Bible, and it's in the list. I'll show you in a minute. But this is only in the Bible one time. And I thought that was interesting that few mentions of it. But when I put in the compiled meaning of the word backbiting, this is what you get. It's malicious gossip or slandering somebody behind their back. And it's associated with severe sins, noting that a backbiting tongue destroys some things, such as trust, causing angry conflicts, and is entirely incompatible with a righteous life. Now, what does the Bible say that backbiting will do? That's the first thing we look. I'll show you some examples. I went through and pulled some things that backbiting will do. And the first thing it does is corrupts the heart. Paul includes in the list of those things that when you don't get away from, in other words, and it says that you go to a reprobate mind. You know what the other alternative wording is for reprobate mind? I seen this week. There's another word that's being used, and it's not changing the Bible. It's in study materials. But do you know what else they call a reprobate mind? They call it a depraved mind. A lot of Bible study materials now say a depraved mind. And what that meaning when you use the word depraved is it goes to stating that it's a state of being morally corrupt, and it also is spiritually blind. Moral corruption and being spiritually blind from anything cruel involved. You know, if a person has persistently rejected these things, the truth, losing the ability to distinguish between right and wrong, all those things, that becomes in the corruption of moral corruption and spiritual blindness. But when they refer to that individual that's persistently rejecting it, that's when we get into the one that has corrupted the heart. And Paul actually mentioned in this very part of Romans that mentioned the next thing that comes in with backbiting that's not always mentioned in gossip, which is why that backbiting is a separate term and not tied together, is because of this one. In the last days, there's some backbiting problems, and one of the biggest things that you get into is having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. What are you to do with that person? Avoid them. Turn them away. Get away. Here's the thing. These are the ones that we are to avoid, because the best definition for one having a form of godliness and denying the power of is a hypocrite. That is the pure definition of a hypocrite. Out of everything listed that was warned to those people in those last days, one of the ones that was going to be coming is the hypocrite, that it's going to hold from an outward form of godliness, but nothing denying in power. And that is one of the very things we are supposed to be avoiding. Now, one more action here. We're talking about dealing with hypocrisy. We talked about corrupting the heart, all coming from backbiting. And a lot of times, backbiting ties to the next one. When I ask you, what is excessive anger? What is excessive anger? I'm not sure. You know, some people can be internally boiling but never show it on their face. But what does excessive anger define? What does that mean?
Show it through actions.
Okay. What else? One of the most dangerous things that we have in our day and time in people is anger. Anger is very uncontrolled in most people and cases. Actually, a report right now in 2026 said that Christian counselors reported that half of the people that come in for some form of Christian counseling, over half of them, their problem is all dealing with anger. Not only does it stop and tear up all the communication and everything, but then people want to justify their anger instead of accepting responsibility. They want to justify what they're doing, not accept responsibility for it. And no matter what people deal with, it's not hard to get angry. And there's some things that the Bible lays out for us on how to dealing with anger. But when it becomes excessive is when we get to a whole new problem. 18 to 22% of Americans experience anger on most days. And a staggering 84% feel the U.S. has become angrier compared to previous generations. Overall, 7.8% of the adult population struggles with poorly controlled, intense anger. That means 1 out of every 10. If you took church attendance, you could say anywhere from 5 to 10 people every Sunday here has just got an outbursting, uncontrolled anger problem. If you went off that number right there, that's how relative that number really is. And you all probably know people. I'll give a good example. He ain't here, but he'd agree to it. Was one of the problems, or one person that we've got in the church. Do you all know who it is that has a lot of trouble when dealing with anger? Y'all know who it is? I'll call him by name just a minute because he'll admit to it. Y'all know? I hope you do. He sits right beside me. But Jimmy will tell you that when he gets mad, all he sees is red. His blood pressure hits the roof. He cannot. It takes everything in him to get back from blowing out nuclear when he gets upset and mad. That's one of his biggest real struggles with dealing with something, is when something really makes him mad. About 60% of men reported getting angry at least once a day, compared to 38% of women. Nearly 1 in 10 adults have a history of impulsive anger issues and have access to firearms. And then in a multi-year analysis, American Psychological Association found that 45% of adults regularly experience irritability and anger. Does anybody here experience irritability and anger? Then there's something wrong. There's got to be one of us in the room, because it said 1 in 10. So somebody's holding back. They're not telling us the truth. But one of the things that makes it an issue, if I'm giving you the Bible examples tonight, one of the things that makes it an issue is when it's motivated by pride, even mentioned in James 1:20. And then when there's nothing coming out of it, it's unproductive, distorting God's purposes. There's another example mentioned. Or when anger is allowed to linger. One obvious sign that anger has turned to sin is when, instead of attacking the problem, we attack the wrongdoer. That's one of our excessive anger issues, is instead of attacking the problem, which is at hand, we attack the wrongdoer. doer. But what does anger bring us to? I'm going to give you some Bible examples for a moment of some things that goes. Proverbs warns us of some things, and even in these two verses in Ephesians 4, we all know that you can be angry, but you can't what?
Sin.
Okay. And don't let the sun go down on your wrath, neither give place to the devil. A quick-tempered person will act typically foolishly, according to Proverbs. And it even mentions it's like a city whose walls are broken down. That's what is mentioned in the book of Proverbs when you study. Because they're entirely defenseless against further hurt, further manipulation, whatever the case may be. And similarly, Ephesians 4 right here warns that if anger is left to linger, what happens when you let a pot on the stove boil over?
Right over.
It spreads. See, the same thing about the city whose walls are broken down is a problem. Because once that anger boils up and over and it runs over, it's spreading. It's going somewhere. It's causing more problems, causing more damage. That also is what we would say by verse 27 is giving a foothold to the devil. Okay? Neither give place to the devil. Not letting the devil have a foothold. One thing that we have to prioritize is that the Bible strictly prohibits taking matters into your own hands. You cannot take a grudge. And then we're even told in Romans 12 that not seeking revenge and to leave room for God to take care of the revenge part. The antidote when dealing with conflict is what's mentioned in Proverbs 15, 1, that a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. How many people you think just walk around bottled up like a bomb waiting to go off? They're the pot's about to boil over. It ain't there. It's boiling, but it ain't blowed up yet. It ain't boiled over. There's a lot of people in that condition in the world right now today. And there's many things that just trigger this issue in people. But if it's unchecked and undealt with, that's one of the things we look at, then we are supposed to be replacing that anger with something else. We are supposed to giving away, not giving place to the devil, not giving a foothold to the devil. We are supposed to be doing some things to replace it with something else. And whether it be forgiveness, compassion, we're to overlook, we're not to listen, or not to deal with, those things along those lines. One of the things we've got to do is make sure that revenge, because that's one of our stickers right there, is that revenge is not involved in what we're doing and what we're dealing with. A lot of times people learn anger management. You ever heard of people going to anger management? They're learning to deflect their anger by either resolving the conflict or replacing it with something else. Well, for a Christian, instead of going to anger management, we would call that spiritual discipline. If you are spiritually disciplined enough, you would know that you are instructed that you can get mad, but you can't sin. You can get mad all you want, but you can't sin. Once that boil over point hits, that's when most people erupt. Most people erupt. So the last solution to dealing with the excessive anger is, obviously, what do you think? Before I show you, what do you think the solution is to dealing with excessive anger? What do y'all think? What's the solution? If I give you, tell me a verse, a Bible verse, about dealing with evil or excessive anger, what verse would you tell me? Anybody? Roger's thinking real hard over here. Watch it. I'm going to give you a verse. Very easy verse in Romans 12:21. This is it. Be not overcome of evil. You have to overcome evil with good. You got to go to the land of the apes like Karen did and sit amongst them to where everybody loves everybody. In Romans 12:21, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. Easier said than done for a lot of people. We are in a society that I feel like now anger drives it all, because politics and government knows that if they can do something to trigger you to be mad, then you'll take action. I'll give you an easy example that I'm seeing right now. Has got some really irate people. But Kentucky has now enlisted a firmer work requirement to get Medicaid. So if people want food stamps and other benefits, there is now going to be a required law that they have to work X amount of hours to get it. That is on the news this past 2 weeks, and you wouldn't believe the people that is tearing the walls down. That they may have to work some time. Now I didn't read into it, but I know they passed it. But one of the very things I knew that would do is trigger an upheaving like you have never seen. They'll probably burn the food stamp office before next week, probably. But you look at how much the government does and goes on. Okay, they go to fighting with the bunch over across the sea, and the fuel price goes. Everybody gets upset. They get mad. Oh, they start throwing a fit. So a lot of our ploy in society and everything we're now doing is really driven by either gossip or anger. That's about the biggest two you see in actions about it. If a church, okay, I'll give you an example. There is a church that thousands of people are now following on Facebook because they, without a warning, they removed their pastor. Okay? I mean, they removed the pastor. Well, the first uproar by everybody was why? And the deacons of the church could not legally tell anybody why. Later, after the finalization of an internal investigation by the Department of Revenue and the IRS, it was because of mass amounts of money that were missing from the church that couldn't be found, that were then later found from the pastor, who was using it for whatever he wanted to do with it, I say. But you would not believe, between that gossip of what everybody thought was going on, or had heard rumor that was going on, to the people that then got mad and angry over what went on. You would not believe destructive process just inside the people in that church. The whole mission of them being there, their entire purpose of being there, it's almost like they have completely walked away and left sight of what they're doing, what their job is to be in the church. I thought a lot about that now, watching people in today's time, of how many people you think are preacher followers? We all think preacher followers. We've got them. Every church has got something. Pastor comes in, there'll be a flock. People come with him, or follow him, or come from somewhere else. Preacher followers. They're everywhere. There's people that will follow. I've seen people that's left a church, went to pastor another, and half of them go with him. They follow. What's the reason we're here? When the devil's got enough stir in the building to allow people's minds to just get a little information in it. And you know what really bothers me the most about it? Now, it don't bother me because I would do this, but what bothers me the most about most church issues is that 90% or more of people will never go to the person and fact check and ask them straight for themselves. You tell me what the problem is. You tell me what's going on. They won't do it. But if 4 or 5 people get together and huddle up and somebody tells them what they think the problem is, what they think's going on, you've just handed all them part of the fire, and then they keep spreading. You think about that, how much society is driven by gossip and anger. Backbiting does go on, and I agree with it, it's bad, but to me, gossip and anger is just a hook problem. And we have gotten so saturated with gossip that we don't know what's real and what's not. We have got ourselves to the point that people right now in our society doesn't know truth from a lie. Probably couldn't tell you which is which if you laid it right in front of them. I could bring in an orange coat and somebody would argue with me that's blue. That's really where we're at. I can look at your birth certificate right now in healthcare and say you're a male. You was born a male at birth, and there's people will argue with me. No, I'm a female. That's how far we have eroded ourselves from identifying truth, from falsehood, whatever else it is. And you know what them people do when you call them basically straight out on what the truth is? They get angry. And when they get angry, here it starts. It starts. So we cannot let evil, no matter what it is and how it attracts us and whatever it deals with us in our lives, we can't let it overcome us. We have to overcome it with good. Anybody got anything tonight to add?
Talking about that word, soft nature, turn it rat. I heard Charles Stanley say one time, some member of the church was really mad. And he come up and he says, he's lit into it. And Charles Stanley says after he's finished, he said, I appreciate that. Is there anything else? And he says, that shut the whole thing down, but sir, he done.
That's why he came.
Done spin it all.
Yeah.
He couldn't come up with, well.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just ask, well, I appreciate that. Is there anything else?
Is there anything else? Mm-hmm.
He
Yeah.
couldn't have that soft nature. He didn't have nowhere else to go.
No. Just waiting to blow up
Yeah.
and tear something down. The biggest problem, or the biggest challenge, I guess I'll say for us, is before we ever get to the word gossip, backbiting, and excessive anger, we stop with the first thing that says to avoid. To avoid. Don't step your foot in the middle of the pond to alligators. Don't walk yourself into the storytelling and whatever's being told and whatever you hear. That's a very thing. You know, one of the things that identifies and separates a lot of things that are not Christ-like is when you see those people doing it. Those actions right there are defined and determined as something that is not considered at all to be Christ-like. And that should be a pretty indicative warning to us when we start seeing those doing that and those actions. But before we even get involved in what all three of these actions are, the very thing we are under covenant ourselves is to avoid it all. Avoid every bit of it. There's plenty of things you can talk about than to worry about chattering of something you don't know is true. Now, it would be different for me if you're discussing the truth of the matter and you're discussing the truth of something that's going on. That's not gossip, in my opinion, but it needs to be provenly able to be shown true. If you can't prove it's true, leave it alone. Just leave it alone. And that's where we're at, I think, right now in modern day times, and where we're at with a lot of things. Okay, AI, it's great. That's why I want to bring up that tonight, because I used it. AI is one of the things that has now got so good that you don't know if it's real. I can put myself at the Bahamas. I can tell that sucker to take me and put me down there at 3:01 p.m. today, and it will make it look just like what it looks like down there. And people may believe, well, some would, they would believe that I'm in the Bahamas. I'm sitting right here in front of you, but I could post it right there, and there'd be tons of people commenting, you're on vacation? You're on vacation? But that's honest to God how well we've been catered to being out of knowing fiction and truth. Truth or lie. Rumor, fake. All that stuff it runs, it's just, it's not really a good thing.
Take AI and have somebody say something like they're really
Yes.
saying it. It's
Yes.
just-
Talking like crazy.
Yeah, and you say, well, I mean, it has to be input. It sounds just like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but it's they put words in their mouth.
Yep. And move the mouth to make it look like it's saying the words. Yeah. And some people, well, there's probably tons of people out there that believe that's really them.
Yeah.
That they really said that. They use Trump all the time. And people say, look at what Trump posted on there. He never put that on there to begin with. But how are we to know? How do we know? Well, that's why we're teaching this part of the covenant, is that if the Bible identifies these as things you're to avoid, then it's also going to tell you that when you get in contact with them or you get messed up and get involved, how you are to get out of it, overcome it, and deal with it, because everybody will find themselves somewhere. Innocently, I tell you what, and this has happened before myself, I've actually had reliable, very reliable people come to me and tell me somebody passed away. And then later, 2 or 3 days later, I'll have somebody ask me, "Hey, did so and so pass away?" And I said, I've understood they did. And about an hour later, they come walking through the store. You know, that's not, to me, gossip, so to speak. I'm not saying that's gossip, but that's how much we take anything we hear and run with it. And that was just an innocent mistake. And the only reason I say it was an innocent mistake is because it was this man's family. And they misunderstood that he'd passed when actually he was near passing, but he hadn't passed away. But anyway, it's very easy just what little information we listen to and gather, we run with. We just run right with it. I've used many examples in here before about people hear everything the preacher says and they run with it, but they never know if it was in there. Do they know? I've always asked, did the Bible say Jonah was swallowed by a whale? Is that in there?
Great fish.
No, it says whale. But there is another part in the Bible that says a great fish. It is in there. It's recorded. Eating of the apple. Adam and Eve in the garden eating apples. Everybody hears, if they hear somebody say that, Sunday school teacher, if they hear somebody say that, then that's the truth. It's the gospel. But in turn, we don't know then what is true and what ain't true. So a lot of things we're rooting from to avoid starts with us knowing what is and is not true. Anybody else got anything to know?
I've seen where they took somebody like Charlie Kirk,
Mhm.
put words in his mouth. That's 180 degrees opposite of what I heard him say.
Right.
But they, made it just sounds just like exactly like him speaking.
Yeah.
But you would think on that. He said it. But you like say, look down there, have AI. I reckon get claim say AI.
There is a black pastor somewhere. I don't remember where he's at. These people all come up to the mic and call something on he said or whatever, and he never answers them. He's got a man sitting right here beside him with this huge Bible, and he reads it. He'll tell him, "Look, this person." I'm assuming he can read. I don't really know, but he'll say, "Look up John 5:13 or John whatever," and that man will flop the book over, and he'll just start reading exactly what he told him to read, and then he'll look at him and quote it right back over to him and say, "The Bible says," and that's what he says. But that's the dissimulating of truth versus falsehood. Anybody else got anything to know?
Doing that a lot. Translations.
Mm-hmm.
Change that and say this is Holy Bible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Change.
Oh yeah. Asking AI to interpret the Bible or interpret meanings of whatever they're trying to look up and study. That's a big one that is getting more popular and being used. Anybody else got anything?